Haunted house, Halloween, animated horror story. I still remember the day we moved into that new house. The sun was dipping low in the sky, painting everything in warm gold, and I felt excited about the adventure ahead. My parents had been searching for months for a place that was both near my school and close to my dad's office. Every house we looked at seemed to have some flaw, too small, too far, or just plain ugly. But finally, Dad found a cozy little place on Maplewood Lane. It was perfect. 2 stories, a neat front yard with a little flower bed, and just a 5-minute walk from my school. Only one thing unsettled me. Right behind our new home stood a dark, abandoned house that had clearly been empty for years. Mum, Dad, and I stood in the driveway, taking it all in. The green paint on our new home was fresh, the lawn was well kept, and even the mailbox was charming. My heart should have been full of joy. Instead, I couldn't help noticing the looming silhouette of that old house looming over the backyard. Its windows were shattered, the shutters hung crooked, and vines curled around the doorframe as if the house itself were trying to swallow its own entrance. A chill slithered down my spine, but I shrugged it off and told myself I was overreacting. That first night, I unpacked my clothes and arranged my shelves. My room was in the back of the house, giving me a clear view of that creepy neighbour. At first, I tried to ignore it, but every time I looked out the window, I felt as though the house was watching me. I could see the empty eyes of those broken windows staring back, daring me to come closer. I told my parents I didn't like my room, that I wanted the master bedroom instead, but they just sighed. "Annie, honey, your room is perfectly fine," Mum said, her voice gentle but firm. "Your dad worked so hard to find this place. Please just unpack and make it your own." I stomped my foot but relented. They were tired after the move, and I didn't want to spoil what should have been a happy moment. So I set up my bed, arranged my books, and tried to think about all the fun things I could do in my new neighbourhood, until the sun went down. When darkness fell, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my ears straining for any sound. The wind sighed through the trees, and far off I heard the creak of an old swing set. That's when I noticed it, a face peering through the second-floor window of the abandoned house. Pale skin, dark hollows where the eyes should have been, and a jagged smile that seemed to stretch impossibly wide. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I bolted upright and threw back the curtains. The face was gone. The window was just an empty frame once more. Was I dreaming? My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was a trick of the moonlight or a shadow cast by a passing car. I tried to convince myself of every logical explanation, but my hands shook and I felt a cold sweat on my back. The next morning at breakfast, I couldn't stop talking about what I'd seen. Dad sipped his coffee slowly, eyebrows raised. "You saw someone in a window?" he asked. "Are you sure it wasn't a reflection?" "I'm positive," I insisted. "I saw him clear as day." Mum reached over and patted my hand. "It was probably your imagination, sweetie. You've been through a lot of changes lately. Let's not worry about ghosts on your first morning." Her calm voice made me feel a little better, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. For the next 2 nights, nothing happened. I tried to laugh it off. I decorated my room with fairy lights, painted small pumpkins on my windowsill, and even made friends with a stray cat that wandered into the yard. Her fur was striped orange and black, almost like she'd been born for Halloween. I named her Ember, and she seemed to sense my unease, curling up on my bed to keep me company. Then, on the 3rd night, it happened again. I was drifting off when I opened my eyes and saw the figure once more, leaning out the broken window, its grin wider than before. My breath caught in my throat. I sat up, and for a moment the figure waved at me, slow, deliberate. My scream caught in my throat, and the figure vanished. I leapt out of bed and ran to Dad's room. He groaned and sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, there's someone in the window again." He switched on the light and went to the window with me. We looked out into the darkness. The abandoned house stood silent, its windows as empty as ever. "I don't see anyone," Dad said. "No, what I saw," I cried. He was smiling and waving at me like he wanted me to come over. Dad sighed and turned on the hallway light. "Huh, there's no reason to be scared. It's probably just some kids playing a prank." "But there's no one else on our street," I argued, and it felt wrong. Mum appeared in the doorway, bleary-eyed. "Enough about this ghost story," she said. "It's late. Back to bed." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Ember padded up and curled at the foot of my bed, her green eyes glinting in the moonlight. I stroked her soft fur to calm myself. Eventually, I drifted off, tense and ready to bolt at the slightest noise. The next day, I decided to take action. I wanted to prove once and for all that someone was there. I packed a flashlight, my phone, and a small pocket knife for protection, just in case, and waited until my parents left for work. Ember followed me as I tiptoed out the back door and through the narrow gap between our house and the abandoned one. The grass was overgrown, and the air smelled of damp wood and decay. I hesitated at the front steps, my heart thudding in my chest like a drum. The wooden boards creaked under my weight as I climbed the porch, but the door was wide open, hanging on one rusty hinge. Inside, the darkness swallowed everything, and my flashlight beam cut a thin swath through the gloom. Dust motes danced in the beam as I stepped across the threshold. The floorboards groaned, and somewhere in the darkness I heard something skitter across the wall. My flashlight flickered, and I punched the side to steady it. Ember hissed softly, her fur standing on end. I took a shaky breath and climbed the staircase, the steps covered in rotting debris. With every step, I felt as though I were being watched. Partway up, I stopped and shone the light at a framed doorway leading to what must have been a living room. The wallpaper was peeling, and broken picture frames lay scattered across the floor, their glass shards reflecting my light. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Is anyone here?" No reply. Only the creaking of the house and the distant tapping of a loose shutter in the window. I pressed on, determined. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out before me, lined with doors that swung open in the breeze. Then I saw it, the window at the end of the hall, exactly where I'd seen the face. My breath caught and I raised the flashlight. The window was intact, but the view beyond was black, as though a void had replaced the pane. I stepped closer, every instinct screaming for me to turn back, but curiosity kept my feet moving. Suddenly, the light revealed the face pressed against the glass. Features warped and grotesque, as if painted on. The eyes were black pits, and the grin stretched impossibly wide. My heart stopped. I fell backward, tripping over a loose board and crashing to the floor. The flashlight skittered across the wood, its beam spinning in frantic circles. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the stairs, but the door slammed shut behind me. Ember hissed and darted past me, charging down the steps. I lunged for the doorknob and yanked, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at my throat. "Mum! Dad!" I screamed, banging on the door. "Help me!" Silence. The house groaned, and the front window shattered, sending glass raining across the floor. I stumbled back, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I pulled out my pocket knife, my hands shaking, and pressed my back against the wall. Then, from somewhere deep within the house, came a child's laughter. Hi, sing-song and eerie. Ember darted past me and vanished into the darkness. I called her name, but all I heard was that chilling laughter echoing through the halls. I dropped to my knees and pounded on the wood. "Help me, please!" For a terrifying moment, it seemed as though no one would come. Then I heard footsteps. A slow, deliberate shuffle above me. I scrambled to my feet and leaned against the door, bracing my weight. The footsteps stopped. Silence. My breathing was ragged and sweat dripped down my face. I closed my eyes, bracing for impact. Then, nothing. No door burst open. No face emerged. I opened my eyes. The door stood eerily still. I whispered, "Who's there?" A voice, soft and childlike, drifted through the wood. "Don't leave me." I froze. The voice sounded lonely, sad. My fear melted into pity. Are you okay?" Silence again. Then the door clicked and it swung open. I tumbled out onto the porch and scrambled away. Ember appeared at my side, nuzzling my hand. We ran together across the lawn toward home. When I burst through the back door, Mum and Dad were on the phone with the police. They looked up, alarmed. "Annie, where have you been?" Dad demanded. I collapsed into Dad's arms, trembling. "I went into that house," I managed to choke out. "I saw something." They exchanged worried looks. "We called the police," Mum said. "They're going to inspect the property." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. I heard a voice. It sounded like a child. The next day, uniformed officers arrived with a flashlight crew. They searched the abandoned house from top to bottom. They found no one, or at least no living person. Just the broken furniture, the pest infestation, and an old diary tucked under a loose floorboard. Dad brought the diary home for me. Its leather cover was cracked and torn, and the pages were yellowed with age. I flipped it open and saw a name scrawled on the first page. Evelyn Parker, age 10. The entry spoke of loneliness, of playing alone in the house when her parents were away, and of the house creaking at night like a living thing. The last entry, dated October 31, 1923, ended abruptly. "I hear them calling my name. They want me to come out and play." No further entries. I closed the diary, my heart sinking. I realised that the face I'd seen, the voice I'd heard, belonged to Evelyn, trapped in that empty house for a century, desperately seeking someone to notice her. That Halloween night, I didn't sleep. I sat by my window, diary open, on my lap, and whispered, "Evelyn, I understand. I hear you." And for the first time, I felt her presence, not as a threat, but as a lonely child looking for a friend. In the days that followed, Dad arranged for the house to be sealed properly. The police declared it structurally unsafe and boarded up the windows. A historical society marked the property for future restoration, but for now, its dark windows would remain shuttered. As the sun set on Halloween, the moon rose bright and full. I stood by my window, looking out at the boarded-up house. Ember sat beside me, purring softly. I held the diary tightly, knowing Evelyn would never truly be alone again. From my room, I whispered a promise to the abandoned house. "Rest now, Evelyn. You're not forgotten." And though the house remained still and dark, I felt a gentle breeze brush my cheek, as if someone sighed in relief. The haunted spirit had finally found peace. At least, until next Halloween, when perhaps another lonely child would need a friend in the shadows. Happy Halloween!